Gypsy Tales, Story Number 9. The Immortal Lad and His Strange Quest. As many years ago as there are stars in the sky, there once lived a king who was called the Red King. No one knows for sure why that was his name, though legend ascribes this title to his big red nose and the brilliant red velvet cape he liked to wear. Every day the Red King traveled to a town, and there he purchased hams, sausages, spices, and pickles. He placed this food in a heavy cupboard made of solid oak, and before he went to bed at night, he locked the cupboard with a large padlock. One morning the king arose with an enormous appetite. He rushed to the cupboard, but to his great dismay, he found that the food and the plates had disappeared. When the same thing occurred the next day and the day after that, the Red King became very angry. He decreed that he would give half of his kingdom to anyone who could catch the thief. When the king's 3 sons heard of their father's pronouncement, they became very upset. They didn't like the idea that half of their inheritance might go to a complete stranger. Therefore, they decided that they would keep watch over the cupboard and catch the thief. When the oldest son told the king of this, the monarch did not object, but he uttered unusual words of caution. "You may see very strange things, my son, and I hope that you'll not be afraid." "I'm not afraid, father," replied the prince. That night the prince went to the room containing the cupboard. He placed a comfortable mattress on the floor and lay himself down. He thought that even if he should fall asleep, the noise that would be made by the burglar certainly would wake him up. However, he was mistaken. Soon a warm breeze flooded the room and lulled the prince into a heavy and unnatural sleep. At precisely the moment when the prince fell asleep, one of the queen's attendants woke up. She sat up in her bed and turned a somersault. Lo and behold! Her nails became sharp-edged and as strong as an axe, and her teeth as powerful as a shovel. Stealthily she stole into the room where the cupboard was located, and where the king's oldest son was fast asleep. With her strong nails, she easily opened the drawers. With her powerful teeth, she cracked the plates into tiny pieces, and then proceeded to eat the food, and, of all things, the dishes too. Having satisfied her hunger, she left the room, turned another somersault, and immediately was transformed into the queen's lady-in-waiting. The next morning, when the king entered the chamber, his son told him that he had seen no one, and that nothing had happened. But the king thought otherwise, and looked into the cupboard. "I'm not surprised that you did not discover the thief," he said to his son. "It would take a better man than you to catch this mysterious thief." The next night, the second oldest son lay himself down near the cupboard. Close to midnight, a warm breeze again filled the room, and soon the prince was overwhelmed with fatigue. Within minutes, he was in a heavy sleep. Up rose the queen's attendant and again turned a somersault. Once more, her nails became as sharp-edged and as strong as an axe, and her teeth as powerful as a shovel. She went to the cupboard and ate up everything, turned another somersault, and once again assumed her usual shape. The king was not surprised to find that he had been robbed again, nor that his son had been unable to apprehend the culprit. Now it was the youngest son's turn to solve the mystery. "I fear you may see very disturbing things, my son," said the old king, "and I must warn you not to be afraid." "I'm not afraid, father," replied the young prince. That night the lad went into the chamber just as his brothers had done on the previous nights. However, he stuck needles into his pillow at 4 different places so that they would push against his face and wake him if he felt tempted to go to sleep. Near midnight, a warm breeze flooded the room and the prince became terribly tired. But the needles pricked his face and he managed to stay awake. In the meantime, the queen's lady-in-waiting rose in her bed, turned a somersault, and became the creature with the sharp nails and powerful teeth. She entered the room, unaware that the prince was awake. He watched her eat the food and the platters, and then he saw her turn a somersault and change back into the queen's lady-in-waiting. And the prince trembled with fear, for he knew that he was in the presence of a witch. After she had left, the prince could not sleep at all. Anxiously he paced up and down, awaiting daybreak, so that he could speak to the king. "Father," said the lad the next morning when the king confronted him, "what I saw was so horrible that I can no longer stay here. I beg you to give me some money and a horse. I want to go far away and eventually marry." As the prince spoke, the old king gravely nodded his head. It seemed to the lad that his father knew the terrible secret. That afternoon the prince placed 2 sacks of gold ducats on his white horse and rode away. When he reached the forest just beyond the city's gates, he dug a deep hole and placed most of the money in it. Then he covered it with the earth and placed some large rocks on top of it. Having done this, he left his home to wander from town to town, city to city, province to province, and country to country. After traveling for 8 long years and not finding a suitable bride, he came to the land of the queen, who ruled over all of the birds. "Where are you going, my prince?" the beautiful young queen asked him. "I'm looking for a bride in the land that old age does not visit," he replied. The queen smiled and said, "Old age does not visit here." "Why is that?" asked the prince. "Because before he can make an appearance, I have to whittle away all of the wood in this gigantic forest." "Then I cannot stay here," the prince replied sadly, for he had immediately liked the beautiful and courteous queen. "One day you'll have completed your task, and old age will arrive." He left the palace of the queen of all the birds, and he journeyed for 8 more years until he came to a palace of copper. And from the castle came a beautiful young maiden who said, "Welcome, good prince. I've waited for you for years and years." She took his horse, placed it in the stable, and fed it oats. The prince spent the night there, but arose early the next morning. He went to the stable, saddled his horse, and prepared to ride off. When the beautiful maiden saw that he was preparing to leave, she cried and asked him where he was going. "To the land where old age does not exist," he replied. "Then you should stay here," she said, "for old age does not come here." "Why is that?" asked the prince. "Because," answered the girl, "before old age may make an appearance, all of these mountains and forests will have to be leveled." "Then this is not the place for me," said the prince. "For surely the mountains and the forests will be leveled one day, and old age will arrive." After he had ridden for some time, the prince's horse turned to him and said, "Master, we have now reached the plains of regret. If you notice me slowing down, spur me on. Otherwise, regret will seize us and cast a spell. If he does that, we'll not escape from this world." As they rode on, sadness overcame the prince, and the horse slowed down to a walk. The prince remembered the horse's instructions, and with extra effort, he forced the animal forward. At last they came to a hut. The prince dismounted and entered the shabby cabin. There he saw a young man sitting in a rocking chair, smoking a pipe. "What are you looking for, good prince?" asked the lad. "I seek the land where old age does not exist," replied the prince. "You have reached your destination," replied the young man. "Old age will never visit my realm." "And who might you be?" asked the prince. "I am the wind," replied the lad. "You have left the land of mortals far behind." Then the prince replied, "If you'll have me, I shall remain here forever." He stayed there for many years, and to his great surprise, he grew no older. Each day the prince watched as the lad left the hut and went hunting in the mountains of gold and silver. One day the wind noticed that the prince seemed very restless. "If you must leave here," he said to the prince, "make sure that you go no farther than the mountains of gold and silver. Under no circumstances are you to visit the Valley of Regret, even though it may appear to be more beautiful than the rest of the countryside." But the prince did not heed the wind's advice. Thinking that the Valley of Regret would contain the most marvelous wonders, he headed straight for it. No sooner had he reached there than grief cast him down. He wept and wept until his eyes were red and he had no more tears to shed. Though he felt sad, he also felt quite well. He realized for the first time in many, many years he had experienced mortal feelings. He returned to the realm of the wind, feeling lonely and lost. He thanked the wind for his kindness and hospitality, but informed him that he had to return to his home to visit his father. Then the wind replied, "Have you forgotten that you have stayed in the land where old age does not exist? Do not go home, good prince, for your father and brothers are no longer there. 1,000,000 years have come and gone since you first arrived here. Even the place where your father's proud castle once stood now is no more. It is a field grown over with fruits and trees and with vegetables. I know this for sure, for less than an hour has passed since I have been there." But the prince, who once again felt all the feelings that human beings felt, he did not believe the wind. He mounted his horse and rode away. Within a few hours he reached the copper palace. He noticed that the mountains of the forest had been leveled. When he entered the palace, he saw a middle-aged lady cutting away at a stick of wood. "You have returned," she said, "but now it's too late. Old age is nearly upon me." "It is too late," replied the prince, "for I have whiled away 1,000,000 years, not on this earth as I should have done, but in the realm of the wind. Now I regret that I did not choose to live as mortals are supposed to live." "That is true, good prince," replied the princess of the copper palace. "I bid you farewell." A few hours later the prince arrived at the palace of the queen of all the birds. He noticed that the gigantic forest had nearly disappeared. Only a few trees were left standing. Inside the palace he found a middle-aged woman instead of the radiant young maiden he had met before. "So, you have returned," she said, when she saw the prince standing in the door. "As you can see, it is too late, even though you are still as young and handsome as when you were last here. Tell me, prince," she continued, "are you happy to have retained your youth?" "Indeed not," he replied. "I'm overwhelmed with regret. I'm sad that I sought the unnatural, and that I did not live my life as other people do." "It is too late for us," the princess said, "for old age is nearly upon me." He realized that she was telling the truth, for no more than 50 sticks were left for her to whittle away. On he rode and at last arrived at the place where his father's palace had stood. But now there was no palace. There were wide fields speckled with fruit trees and vegetable patches. He walked over to a well that he recognized as the same one that used to be located in the courtyard. He knelt by it and gazed into the water. Just then the strange creature who had eaten all of the food and the plates from his father's cupboard rose from the well. "It has been a long, long wait, O prince," she wailed, "but you could not do otherwise. To be freed of my curse, I had to wait 1,000,000 years for you." Saying that, the witch disappeared. As he wandered about the orchard, the prince noticed an old man. "Tell me, my good man," said the prince, "where is my father's palace?" "And who might you be?" asked the old man, scratching his head. "I'm the son of the Red King." The old man looked at the prince in utter disbelief. "I've no time for fools like you," he said at last. "Everyone around here knows the story of the haunted castle. But the castle existed more years ago than there are stars in the sky. Nothing remains of the castle, nor of the great city. Surely you can see that for yourself that nothing is here. So do not play me the fool and tell me that you're the Red King's son." "Then follow me," said the prince, "and I shall prove you that I'm telling the truth." For many hours he searched for the mound where he had buried the money. When he found it, he saw that it was covered with moss and ferns. Carefully he dug until he hit some stones. He lifted them and tossed them aside until he came upon the chest containing the gold ducats. "Look at these," said the prince, handing some of the gold coins to the old man, "and tell me where they come from." The old man turned the coins over in his hands and held them close to his eyes. Never before had he seen money of such ancient mintage. When the old man was mumbling to himself and shaking his head, the prince bent over the chest and removed some more coins. Then he noticed that Old Age was sitting in the pit. "You've come home at last," said Old Age, "and now you're like all other mortals." "I'm grateful that you're here," said the prince. "Take me with you." And Old Age and the prince walked off into the unknown. The old man, who had not seen Old Age, nor heard the conversation, was astonished to find that the prince had disappeared. "There are strange and unexplainable things in the world," he muttered to himself, and he shuffled off into the countryside just as the sun was setting and the sky was a brilliant red. End of story number 9.